Welcome back to Small Town Legends, where we dive into the shadowy corners of small town America, unearthing the dark, the strange, and the inexplicable. Each episode, we bring you a tale that lingers like mist on a forgotten road, casting shadows where there should be only light. So lock your doors, dim the lights, and open your mind, because tonight's story might just keep you up until dawn. In the heart of Alaska, where the wind howls like a warning and the northern lights dance like restless spirits, lies a town on the edge of the world, Nome. A town of grit and solitude, where the sea is as unforgiving as the frozen wilderness that surrounds it. Here, in this isolated place, there are stories, whispers, and shadows that drift across the landscape like the endless snow. Stories of people who walk into the night and are never seen again. Over the years, dozens of people, men, women, young, and old, have vanished from Nome without a trace. They leave behind families, friends, homes, and memories swallowed up by the icy vastness, or perhaps something far darker. Some say it's the work of the wild, a ruthless landscape that claims its own, indifferent to human life. Others speak in hushed voices about sinister forces that wander these lands, invisible yet ever present. Tonight, we're heading north to investigate the town of Nome, Alaska, a place of whispers and wanderers, of icy roads and mysterious disappearances. But to understand why this story chills the bones of even the most rugged Alaskans, we have to understand the strange, desolate beauty of the town itself. So let's start at the beginning, when Nome first took its place in Alaska's ghostly landscape. Nome's story begins like many frontier towns, forged in the fires of feverish ambition. In 1899, gold was found glinting in the streams and sands of the nearby beaches. This discovery ignited a frenzy. Prospectors from every corner of the globe rushed to this unforgiving land, willing to brave the bone-chilling cold, the isolation, the danger. Nome was a place of extremes: extreme wealth, extreme hardship, and extreme isolation. The town grew rapidly, from a scattered collection of makeshift shelters to a bustling, rowdy mining hub. But Nome's prosperity was like a candle flickering against the relentless Arctic wind. Winters here are long, dark, and brutal. The sea freezes solid, trapping the town in icy isolation, cut off from the rest of the world. Perhaps it was here, in this harsh and unyielding wilderness, that the seeds of its mystery took root. Some say Nome is haunted, not just by the souls of those who came for gold and never left, but by forces older than the gold rush, older than the town itself. The indigenous peoples of this land tell stories of spirits in the wilderness, of creatures that lurk in the shadows, watching, waiting. But these spirits aren't the only ones that Nome residents fear. In this unforgiving land, life and death walk hand in hand. It's a place that swallows the careless, where a single misstep can mean the difference between survival and a freezing, lonely death. And yet, despite its dangers, Nome calls to people, beckoning adventurers, risk-takers, and wanderers. And some of those who answer its call never make it back. From the early 1900s to recent years, people in Nome have disappeared. Dozens of them. Men and women who walked into the night, never to be seen again. For each one, there's a story. Some are last seen in bars, telling tales of heading out into the wilderness. Others vanish without a sound from their homes, as if the night itself claimed them. The FBI says it's just the harsh reality of life on Alaska's edge, but locals, well, they aren't so sure. Tonight, we're unraveling the threads of this story, piecing together the mystery of Nome and those it has taken. The people who walked out into the freezing dark and never returned. So sit tight, turn up the volume, and prepare yourself to venture into the icy unknown as we explore Nome, Alaska, the town that whispers of shadows and leaves a trail of missing souls in its wake. The disappearances in Nome began quietly. One by one, people vanished, often without a trace. So quietly, in fact, that it took years for the townsfolk to realize the sinister pattern that was unfolding around them. The first known case happened in the early 1920s when a prospector named Samuel Tolk wandered out into the dark one evening. Samuel was a tough man, well-versed in survival, with years of experience braving Alaska's brutal wilderness. Some say he was restless that night, talking about the gold veins he'd found in a dream, certain they were out there waiting for him. He was last seen heading north toward the mountains, his silhouette swallowed by the pitch-black Alaskan night. He never returned. His cabin was found later, untouched, with his gear packed and ready. There were no signs of struggle, no signs he had planned to be gone for long, and it was as if he had simply drifted away into the night. Not long after Samuel's disappearance, others followed. A local woman named Clara Thompson was next. She had gone to visit a friend late one evening and never arrived. Her footsteps led from her house to the edge of town, and then they stopped. No sign of a struggle, no clues, no farewell notes, just silence. Her husband and young daughter searched frantically, calling her name into the night, but all they found was empty snow and silence. By the 1940s, the disappearances had increased. Local legends grew, fueled by the whispers of townsfolk who couldn't shake the eerie similarities between each case. Each victim had last been seen alone, in the quiet of night, as if drawn by some unseen force that lured them beyond the safety of their homes, beyond the reach of search parties and rescue dogs. These were people familiar with the wild, people who understood how unforgiving the land could be. Yet they had each met with the same fate, vanishing as though they had been swallowed by the landscape itself. As the decades rolled on, Nome's missing person count would continue to grow. Fishermen would disappear while setting out on their boats. Miners vanished from their campsites without a sound. Each time, families were left wondering, clinging to hope in the face of an unsolvable mystery. The pattern grew so disturbing that rumors began to form. Some whispered of a curse, one that dated back centuries to a time before the miners, before the town itself. Stories spread of an ancient spirit that guarded these lands, watching from the shadows, luring travelers away from the safety, hungry for those who ventured too close to the edges of civilization. They called it the Night Walker, a phantom of the Alaskan tundra that appeared as a flickering shadow on the horizon, drawing unsuspecting wanderers into the frozen void. Yet others had different theories. They spoke of lights, strange, ethereal glows seen hovering over the mountains, over the frozen fields, lights that could be glimpsed just before someone went missing. These were no ordinary northern lights, they said. These were cold, watching lights, tracking people's movements, choosing those who would vanish next. Those who saw them described an unnatural chill that seemed to seep through their clothes, a feeling as though someone or something was watching them from behind. In the 1960s, when Nome had grown and word of the disappearances spread, townsfolk began to take greater precautions. Yet the disappearances continued. In 1964, 3 experienced hunters vanished on an expedition north of Nome. They'd been tracking caribou, their supplies and tools well prepared. But when they failed to return, a search party was dispatched. What they found left the town rattled with dread. The hunters' camp was deserted, their gear and rations neatly organized as though they had just stepped out for a moment. No tracks led away from the site, only a silence that seemed to cling to the air like frost. The hunters, like so many others, were never seen again. For decades, Nome's unexplained vanishings cast a shadow over the town, each new disappearance deepening the mystery and adding another ghostly tale to the town's legend. By the 1980s, the disappearances had become so frequent that residents began avoiding the outskirts of Nome at night. Those who had to travel did so only in groups and rarely alone. Still, the disappearances persisted, almost mocking the town's precautions. Year after year, Nome lost people to the silent grasp of the wilderness. Some say it's the bitter cold, the unending white expanse that disorients travelers, leading them astray. Others believe it's something else entirely, a darker force hidden in the snow and silence, something that takes what it wants, leaving only traces and legends behind. The disappearances in Nome have baffled searchers, detectives, and grieving families alike. Each lost soul leaves behind questions, whispers that blend with the wind and echo through the icy streets. But while rational minds seek logical explanations, there are those who believe Nome's disappearances are the work of something far beyond our understanding. Tonight, we're crossing the line between the world we know and the shadows we fear. Let's explore the theories that have kept Nome's mystery alive for decades. One of the most chilling theories claims the disappearances are the work of shadow people, beings that flit just out of sight, slipping between our world and another. Nome locals say these creatures are drawn to isolation and are especially powerful in places like the Alaskan wilderness, where the line between life and death is thin, where darkness reigns more than light. The legend of the Nightwalker is one such figure, a phantom that appears as a dark silhouette against the shadowy horizon, standing perfectly still until its victim draws close. Then it shifts, moving faster than the eye can follow, disappearing and reappearing, leading its prey deeper into the wilderness, farther from safety. Those who claim to have seen the Nightwalker describe an unnatural sense of dread, a heaviness in the air, as if all warmth and light had been stripped from the world. Some believe the Nightwalker chooses its victims, seeking out the lonely, the distracted, the ones who linger too long by themselves. Maybe it's drawn by their solitude, maybe by their fears, but whatever its motive, the result is always the same. Its chosen are never seen again. And then there are the lights. In Nome, talk of strange lights hovering over the frozen fields goes back as far as anyone can remember. It's no surprise to see lights in the Alaskan skies. The aurora borealis dances above on clear nights, casting ghostly green and purple hues across the landscape. But these lights, these are different. Cold blue, icy white, sometimes a faint purple, flickering like candle flames in the wind. They appear in the dead of night, hovering low over the land, moving with a sentience that leaves even the bravest Nome locals shivering. Some believe these lights are visitors from another world, sentinels that watch from the skies, searching for humans to take with them into the stars. It was in the 1960s that reports of UFO sightings began in Nome. Fishermen, hunters, townsfolk, they all reported seeing strange, silent crafts floating over the mountains, blinking with those same icy blue lights. Some of them even claimed to have lost time, reporting hours they couldn't account for, memories that seemed to slip away like sand through the fingers. A few spoke of dreams they couldn't shake, visions of bright lights, strange machines, voices in a language they couldn't understand. And each time they woke with the feeling that they were being watched. One man, a miner named Thomas Fenwick, claimed he'd seen the lights on a stormy night out by the edge of town. He had been preparing his tools, eyes set to the ground, when a strange glow caught his attention. He looked up, and there it was, a shimmering, glowing craft hovering just above the treetops. Soundless but bright, almost blinding. His mind went blank, and the next thing he knew, it was morning. Thomas remembered nothing of what happened that night, but his clothes were torn, his hands scraped and raw, and his tools gone, scattered far from where he left them. He swore the craft had taken him somewhere he couldn't remember, but he knew he had seen something that didn't belong in this world. As the lights continued to appear, sightings multiplied. People began to believe they were the work of a presence from beyond the stars. And as more and more people vanished, the rumor grew. The lights were searching, waiting, choosing. But strange lights and shadowy figures aren't the only paranormal culprits whispered about in Nome. Some believe these disappearances are tied to ancient spirits, forces deeply connected to the land. The indigenous peoples of Alaska have long spoken of shape-shifting beings known as the Kushtaka. According to the legend, the Kushtaka are creatures that can take the form of humans or otters, luring lost travelers with the sounds of familiar voices. They play tricks, leading people off course, guiding them deeper into the wilderness, where they're met with a far darker fate. It's said that once a Kushtaka has set its sights on someone, there's little hope of escape. They call to you from the shadows, take on the face of someone you know, and by the time you realize the deception, it's too late. You're already lost. Could the Kushtaka be behind the disappearances in Nome? Some think so. They say the Kushtaka is drawn to places of isolation, to people who are struggling, grieving, vulnerable. Nome, with its lonely, frozen landscape, is the perfect hunting ground. But perhaps the most haunting theory of all is the idea that the land itself is to blame, that Nome is cursed, marked by something dark and unyielding. It's said that those who go missing are claimed by the wilderness, their spirits trapped, unable to leave. They become part of the landscape, their voices mingling with the wind, their shadows cast against the endless snow. People talk of strange sounds, distant screams carried by the wind, whispers that seem to come from the ground itself. Some locals believe that each disappearance strengthens this curse, binding more souls to the frozen land, feeding whatever dark presence lurks beneath the snow. Is it a curse, a creature, a visitor from beyond the stars, or something we cannot name, something lurking in the corners of Nome, watching from the shadows, waiting to take the next unwary soul? Gnomes missing are gone, leaving behind only fragments, empty tents, scattered tools, footprints swallowed by the snow. In this small town at the edge of the world, each disappearance is a reminder that some questions will remain unanswered, some shadows unexplored. For decades, families have searched, hunters have combed the land, and investigators have asked their questions. But the land holds its secrets close, hiding them beneath layers of ice and darkness. Even now, the theories endure. Are the vanished caught in some ancient trap, their voices now part of the howling wind? Are they victims of forces beyond our understanding? The shadowy Kushtaka, the strange lights from above, the silent figure known as the Night Walker? Or perhaps Nome itself, so silent and cold, holds a dark secret that reaches back further than anyone remembers. The truth remains out of reach, an ever-present shadow in the lives of Nome's residents. With each new disappearance, the mystery grows, like footprints leading off into the endless snow, beckoning towards a darkness that cannot be named. We may never know what truly happened to Nome's lost souls, but their presence lingers, flickering on the edges of sight, caught in whispered rumors, woven into the town's history like spectral threads. So if you ever find yourself in Nome, Alaska, standing on that frozen, desolate landscape with the quiet stretching around you, remember the stories. Remember those who wandered into the night and never came back. And maybe, just maybe, don't go out alone. Because in Nome, it's easy to disappear without a trace. And sometimes, what we don't see can haunt us the most. Until next time, stay safe, stay aware, and remember, some legends are born in shadows, and some disappear into them.